Hey, hey. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Shania Lancaster, or AKA Pinky Hooks, and I am going to be talking about something that I I didn't think I would ever talk about on this channel. You guys know that most of the time I will say, or I have said in the past, that I do not like to get into heavy topics because we have enough of that in the world. But what I will be discussing tonight, it may make some people feel uncomfortable. Um, it is a topic that all of us are sick of hearing, but I also believe that it can be a healthy topic if the deliverance is right. And basically, like nobody likes to talk about issues in the world that deal with racism. And there's a couple of things that I was intrigued to talk about or to be transparent with you. There may be things that you hear in this discussion that you never knew. Most of these things are coming from my own past experience, uh, you know, as a young adult. Um, some of them are just coming from my opinions as how I see, not just where I'm not talking about just the black and the white, I'm talking about from all races. And I hope at the end of this video that, it will bring awareness, for not just the black and the white side. That's kind of crazy to me. That's a little crazy to me. You know what I'm saying? Because people act like there's only two races sometimes when they think of racism. The most common races that people think, when they hear racism, they instantly think black and white, and it goes beyond that. But nevertheless, how I felt the need and felt compelled to discuss this was because I was I literally was eating dinner, and I was rushing to record, but this wasn't the topic I was planning to talk about. So basically, I was watching like an old episode of Divorce Court, and there was a mixed woman who was half black, half white. She was married to, a black man, and they're in divorce court. And basically, she was saying that the problems that they had was based on the fact that her husband, soon to be ex-husband, would aggravate her by saying things like, "Why are you acting like you don't know, what I'm talking about," when he would say something about like his views on whites or other races. And she was trying to explain to him, yes, I am half black and I'm half white, but I really don't know what you're talking about because I wasn't raised in the same environment. And the husband was really upset because he felt as though that his wife was just trying to use the fact that she was biracial as a crutch to basically get out of the conversations of, like being oppressed as a black person in America and so on. And she was being sincere. And what her husband could not seem to understand was that it wasn't just a matter of race, but there was two topics involved. It was race, but it was also geographical or demographics. And she had a really good point because I've had the experience of being in two different types of demographics, or maybe several. I understood where she was coming from. Now, I am not biracial. I am black 365, baby. Believe that, And of course, by my complexion, my complexion tells you the story of somewhere down the line back that, somewhere in my family, yeah, there is a mix. That's the reason why I have a lighter complexion. But as far as the immediate family, yes, my mom and dad are black. Okay. Nevertheless, going back to that, I was listening to this woman and it kind of made me think like all the experiences that I've had before, when I became a young adult, and really when I moved out of the urban area of Philadelphia. My life, y'all have heard me say a million times, I grew up in West Philadelphia. I mean, literally, like urban area. Wasn't no suburbs around. I didn't even understand what a suburb was really until I left Philadelphia. And just to give you a little bit of background, I mean, there were no white kids. In the elementary school that I went to, it was all black. I mean, yeah, the only white people that I saw was the nuns. I saw the nuns and the priests when I would go to Catholic school. There were no white kids, okay? There were no mixed kids. In my school, there wasn't even Latinos. When I went to high school, okay, my dad had put me my first year of high school. I was still in Catholic school. I went to West Catholic Girls High. That was when I started seeing white kids. These girls were Italian from South Philly, and most of them, yes, I mean, wasn't a stereotype. It was a true fact. Most of those girls, they did belong to like organized crime. Like they came from mob families, and I remember interacting with those girls it was just like, oh my God, there's a white girl, and they were looking at me like, oh my God, there's a black girl. And when my dad took me out of that high school and he put me into like the last 3 years of my high school, and he was just like, okay, Shine, I'm putting you in public school. At my high school, that school was 85% black. We had 2 white kids, and the rest of it was of Asian descent. It was mostly Vietnamese, Cambodian, some Chinese, maybe 1 or 2 Koreans, but that's what I saw. And I do remember, I went through high school and I graduated, and I remember, I want to say it was like a Black history paper that I had to write. And when I was growing up, there was 2 people I always chose to write my paper on. Always. Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. Like, I might have chosen, like, what was his name? I might have chosen, now I think about it, I ain't never choose. It was always those 2. Anyway, nevertheless, I think by the time I got into my senior year, I don't know what it was that I was talking about. And my dad, he caught the gist of it, and he said, Shania, the world is not black. Yep, that's what my dad said. And what he was trying to say, and he was very subtle, he said, I don't want you to get into this 5-mile radius thinking that the world is black, because it's bigger than that. But he understood it was because of the environment that we was in. The only time that I saw anybody outside of my race, I literally had to go like downtown. I had to go into a store. I basically had to go in stores, because the only thing I was going to see was Asians, at the dry cleaners. I know that sounds stereotype, but I'm telling y'all the truth. I saw them when they sold like, sneakers or whatever, like they had their own little shops, or when we would go and get fast food, Chinese takeout. Like, I really didn't see anybody else except for me. So it was like reverse. You ever go to some place, and I've heard blacks say, oh my God, I went to here, and they act like they never saw a black person. But I was the opposite. My dad was in the Air Force. I did see, that was when I saw white people, when my dad had the squadron picnics. So, the Air Force picnics, we go to Jersey, and I see the people that my dad worked with. And also I saw like white children when my dad would send me to Girl Scout camp. And that was when I got to see a mix of, I saw somebody other than kids that look like me. Anyway, once I graduated from high school and we moved to Delaware, I can honestly say that was the first, basically that's when I started experiencing very mild cases of racism. It was, and I had this conversation with my dad about 2 months ago. When it first happened to me, I didn't even realize what was happening. Like, I did not realize that an incident that happened to me was actually someone being a bigot or showing or exuding their racist attitudes towards me, because it was so mild. And me and my father said, Shine, I had the same experience when I was a kid. He did not. Now, he experienced his first case when he was younger. Now, y'all look at my complexion. My dad is a little bit lighter than me. My aunt, his sister, is lighter than me, whatever. And so this is a true statement when I say this. There is levels to which different Black people experience racism. And I know this sounds crazy, and I'm not saying this like I'm better. My dad knew exactly what I was talking about. I was not, the kind of racism that I experienced was very condescending, meaning that I literally, as a young adult, like in my early 20s, mid 20s, I literally experienced not just white, but other races that would say things to me like, you're very smart. You're not like the other Black people. Like, they would act like they were helping me. Yeah, they would give me more information. They would school me on things or teach me or expose me things that they would not expose to maybe the darker Black people of my, my race. They would just kind of, it was almost like I was a pet project sometimes. Now, me being 52 as a Black woman now, I mean, I can see all that now, but I couldn't see it then. I literally was somewhat naive, because you have to understand that if my world was Black, where I was growing up at, right? And now here I am, like 19. By the time I'm 19, I done moved to Delaware, whatever. And it was the first time that I was starting to see a mix. Because if you've ever been to Delaware, if you've been to Delaware or you live in Delaware, then you know what I'm talking about. Outside of Wilmington, all these little places in Delaware, we're talking about the first state, there is, I mean, it's a lot of Blacks, don't get me wrong, but there was my first experience of a lot of racism that I had never experienced. Now, there's only 2 incidents in my whole entire life, thank you, Lord, that I've ever experienced where they were blunt. They made sure that I knew that they were like, I don't like you. Your skin is the worst thing that I could ever see. It was a hard experience, because I had never, like I said, I experienced it on surface levels, like stupid little things like, man, you are really pretty for a Black girl. Are you mixed? Is your father like 100% Black? Is your mom 100%? Because they were looking at my complexion. And I just didn't understand. I didn't understand why people were asking me that. I didn't understand, why sometimes within my own race, while there was a tug of war between a more fair-skinned Black person and a dark-skinned Black person. I literally did experience that, you know. And I know a lot of blacks, if anybody's looking at me, they may get mad because they feel like this is something that no one should discuss outside of our own race. But there is a tug of war. There is a tug of war, you know, sometimes amongst us. And this was back in the day. And I don't know how, I don't think it's like still a tug of war, but basically the tug of war came from other races outside treating us differently because of the shades that we were. And I didn't see it. Some of the racism that I dealt with is within my own race. And what I mean by that is that my dating experience. Now, once again, I did not interact with other races outside of blacks until I moved to Delaware. Now here you got this whole melting pot, you know, so to speak, of what I think the nation was originally like, what they envisioned for this nation to be, like this melting pot. And I have dated outside my race. I've dated black men, but I've dated white men. I've dated Puerto Rican, Mexican, Vietnamese, Cambodian, Japanese, Cuban, Indian of Hindu background. Like, I have dated, like, pretty much, I mean, like, to me, hey, I'm straight. If you're a man, that's all that matters to me, you know. And I do recall the first time that I dated outside my race, the first race that I dated was a white male. And I got a lot of backlash. I've heard things like, you know, I really, really like you, but man, you know, I can't mess with you now. Like, do you know that you humiliate, like how humiliating it is to see you walking around as a black woman, you walking around with this, you're walking around with that, you're walking around with anybody that's not us. Okay. But what I was trying to explain to people was just like, what difference does it make? Now, don't get me wrong. I understood where they were coming from. When I say they, I'm talking about black men, because in their own way, they felt like, dang, you know, they felt slighted. But I had to give someone a little bit of background about my experience. Do you know what it's like for me as a black woman to hear from a black man, you're not black enough? Do you know what it's like for me as a black woman to hear from a white man who only likes to date black women, you're not black enough? Excuse me? So I have heard from both sides that I'm not black enough. And that leads me into the next part of this conversation, which is what determines me being black enough, or what determines someone being white enough? What determines someone being Asian enough? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. But I knew where both sides was coming. The black man was looking at me like, you're not black enough because, oh, I'm sorry, I don't only listen to R&B or only hip hop or only jazz. Shania I like alternative. I like heavy metal. I like classical. I like tribal music. I like, you know, alternative. I was into the grunge era big time, you know? But then when I was dating a white guy who's only in to black women, he told me, and I quote, the reason why I wasn't black enough is because I wasn't ghetto enough. I didn't understand that. Why would I want? First of all, that right there is a stereotype. That right there. And then on top of that, I don't want to be ghetto, because that's a stereotype, and anybody could be what you call, quote, ghetto. I didn't understand that. And that was one of the white men that I dealt with. So now I am bouncing back and forth. I'm being bounced back and forth, which that led me outside the black and white race. And now I'm like, okay, now I'm dating other races, you know? And it's weird to not be, for two different races to tell me I'm not black enough. And that got me thinking, well, damn, what the hell does being black define? I mean, how is it defined? That's my personal experience. And I mean, some of the other things besides dating, I've also had, just regular friends, both female and male. They would say things like, like, what are you watching? Because I am not a person who only wants to watch like a black show or a black sitcom. I just, yes, I don't. I mean, don't get me wrong. Please do not misunderstand what I'm saying. Yeah, I look at a ton of black shows, but there are shows that I like that I literally would have people say like, girl, only white people look at that, or only Asian people look at, what are you doing looking at that? Why don't you watch this? Why don't you watch? Because I don't want to. Maybe the storyline doesn't pique my interest. There is one movie that I like, and I know, man, I had got so much backlash about it. A lot of people don't know that I like the movie. I actually have mixed feelings about the movie itself, but one of my movies that it's kind of weird that I love it and hate it at the same time, and that is Gone with the Wind. I love Gone with the Wind because the story itself, the story is a fabulous story. There is no denying that. In my book, there isn't. However, as a black person, yes, do you really think that I'm comfortable with the parts of watching a mammy or the way they had those blacks talk, and they had to have them talking like that for the role, maybe, I mean, I wasn't there. I wasn't there when slavery happened, so I don't know how we were talking. I really don't. And some people be like, oh, Sean, you're just trying to play up, to a white audience. That's not true. I am telling you, I enjoyed the story. And do you know who I enjoyed? Why I enjoyed the story? Like I said, it was a good story. There's no doubt about it. I don't enjoy watching, and I mean, you got to say, I mean, I don't remember scenes in Gone with the Wind where you saw, yes, you did see that there were slaves. You knew it was during the time of the Civil War, but it wasn't one of the movies like watching Roots where I'm watching slaves get beat, and people's backs being torn open by a whip. No, it wasn't like that. I watch Gone with the Wind because when I think of Gone with the Wind, I really do think of a romance. Not to mention, the main reason why I love, here's a little secret y'all didn't know. I love Scarlett because she was the first boss. And when I say boss, I'm talking about these kids walking around here talking about, I want to be my own boss. Any woman that can rock a whole entire green velvet curtains, okay, and she had a hat and a matching handbag. And she went into town looking good when she went to go see, Red in jail. Anybody that can rock some curtains, hey, they all right in my book. I'm sorry, I had to bring a little humor to this. But seriously, yeah, I like that. And there are other shows that I like and people don't get, or like I am a big fan of black and white movies. And yes, unfortunately, like one of my favorite movies is Mildred Pierce. I love Joan Crawford. So yeah, I'm going to see some scenes where you only see blacks where they are butlers and maids and then they make them talk, certain ways or whatever. Yeah, I don't like all of that. Of course course I don't like that. But again, because I'm an artist, I am looking at a story, a show, a movie for the storyline. Because there are plenty of white shows, if that's what you want to call them, or whatever, that have poor storylines. And I'm like, I don't want to see this crap. That's just me. And I will hear people say, like, man, why are you looking at that? You need to watch this. You need to watch. Nah, I don't want to watch it. I don't feel comfortable with it. Why are you listening to that music? Why are you listening to that? How come you're not listening to that? Oh, you always trying to play up to them. It's not that. You see, let me explain something to y'all about my dad. And y'all hear me talk a lot about my dad, but one thing that I'm really grateful for, and I hope my dad sees this particular, episode. Dad, if you're watching, thank you. Thank you for never having been that parent or person in my life that my dad never brought up race as far as like me becoming an adult and who I interacted with. Now, don't get me wrong. My dad educated me on the history of blacks in America, okay? But my dad never planted that seed in my mind about who I was to date or who would be acceptable, with me mingling. No. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said, as a black man himself, yes, he had to basically make me aware of, hey, there's people out there in the world, Shine, that don't like us because of our skin color. Yes, he was very, until this day. Yeah, he's always going to be aware of that. But my dad is very open-minded, and he never once brought up race or said, hey, you better not bring somebody home that don't use the same type of comb. I mean, that's old black folk. Like, you don't bring them home if they don't use the same comb. Don't get me wrong. Every race has in private discussed other races. Now, you may not have used the N-word, or I may not have called a white person, a cracker or something like that. However, I don't deny, like, everybody has their conversations in private. And you know what it is? A lot of times when you're talking, and you can have a conversation about another race in private amongst your own without you being a bigot or racist. It's called curiosity. It's called, like, I wonder. That's what it's called. And it's starting to get dark. Hold on, y'all. Here we go. Sorry, I had to adjust the lighting. God, my forehead is shiny. But what I'm saying is that I laugh when I hear the races go back and forth. I hear blacks go, who the most racist person is? White people. But I've heard white people say, who the most racist person is? Black people. But I'm here to tell y'all, I know who the most racist person is. You know who the most racist person is? Or the most racist race is? Anyone that keeps it going is the most racist person. That's who's racist. The most racist person is the one that keep it going. Do you know what I'm talking about? If you keep it going, when you start saying, like, the mixing of the races, or this needs to stop, or everybody needs to stay over here to their own, or whatever. Me personally, I'm sorry, and I know I'm going to get some backlash for people that don't belong to this channel, possibly people that belong to this channel, possibly people stopping in to see what I'm saying, but I really don't care. I feel like a lot of times people tiptoe around these type of things, and I'm just sharing my personal experiences with you guys, like from the people that I've dated, from things that were being said to me. I know for a fact, because it was told to my face, by both white men and white women. As I was in corporate, I'm still in corporate, but in my early years, they thought they were trying to help me, maybe in their own little crazy way. They thought they was helping me, but they literally was trying. They would say they're trying to groom me, because they was just like, you're not like black people, and it was almost like, really in layman terms, like, you're more groomable because you look safe, your complexion, you're cute, and yes, we can work with you. We can't work with the rest of them over there, but we can work with you. And if you're saying, Shine, you sure that wasn't in your mind? No. I know, because the minute that you come out and say, instead of, yeah, you can groom me to be something, big, or groom me for management, but see, soon as you add on, like, you're not like the rest of the blacks, and I'm telling you this because I see you have potential. But why don't the rest of them have potential? Tell me why. Like, it'd be different if you said they don't have potential because they don't want to come to work on time, or they're always goofing up, or they got a whole bunch of mistakes, or, something like that. But you just said, you're different from the other blacks. Like, you shouldn't even said that. You should have said you're an employee that stands out because of your work performance. Had you not said anything about the race, then and only then would I now reflect as an older woman, say, wait, that's a little, it had a racial tone to it. Yeah, I mean, again, these are my own experiences. And I am very grateful that like I said, there's only been twice in my life that I experienced it. Like, these people made sure that I knew what I was to them when they looked at me. They did not care if I was attractive or nothing. And when the first time that it happened to me, I was only 20, I think I was 22, and I was working in Payless Shoe Store. And this man came in the shoe store, and I mean, we're talking about Payless Shoe Store back in the day. We're talking about like in the year of 90, 92, 93. And I'm at the front, and he had his little girl, and so he walked down the aisle, and when he came in, I said, how you doing? Let me know I just said, let me know if there's anything I can help you with. The first comment he made was, what makes you think you can help me? Now, in my mind, I'm like, okay. So I realized that he was standing up on the step, and he was trying to get some shoes down, and we have to tell the customers, you're not allowed to go into the overhead. And when I went down there with the pole, just to assist them, like to say, hey, sir, let me get that down, that man turned around, and that was the first time that I ever heard the N-word being used to me directly. And he said, nigger, if you don't get away from me right now, I'm going to make you sorry. I was stunned. I felt violated. I felt scared. It was like, it was a serious, like, I couldn't believe. And unfortunately, my manager was at lunch, who was black. The only other person in the store was the guy, Sean, and he was white, and he was in the back. He was our stock boy. He was opening shipment. So that means I'm the person that has to ring him up. And he came up there with his daughter. She couldn't have been no more than 4. I know she didn't know what the word meant. And he came up there and threw the box of shoes at me. I didn't even know if I should open up my mouth and tell him how much the shoes were. But I had to. When he threw the box at me, I checked the shoes. It was silent. And I was hoping that he was just going to look at, like the cash register and just see how much it is. But he just stood there like I knew it wasn't going to end well. And I remember mumbling, $9.99. And he said, so now you can open up your mouth, but I bet you can open up your damn lips to sing all that jungle music. So now I have to extend my hand to take this money. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And I took the money, and I want to say that he gave me a 20. I couldn't get this man's money, his change, back to him before he started saying, hurry up, because I know how y'all like to steal. And he already called me a nigger. And he was boisterous. He was very loud. He was very intimidating. He snatched that money out of the hand, and now I got to hand him his change. I'm trying so hard not for my skin to touch his. I'm terrified. I didn't know if he was going to grab my hand. Nothing. I mean, he snatched that money, and I kind of like just dropped the change in his hand and praying that he was going to catch it. He snatched that bag of shoes out my hand, and then he turned to his child and spoke to the child so ever lovingly, and left. And that was my first out of 2 harsh, direct experiences with racism. I'm telling you, and I don't even want to tell the second one because that other one was even worse. I don't want to even talk about that second one, but I'm telling you guys this experience because this leads me into another point. When people start to say, oh, it was an experience that I had, that's the reason why I act this way. I did not allow those experiences to mold how I reacted to the next white person that was in my view. I couldn't, because I wasn't raised that way. I was not raised that way. And matter of fact, I'm not designed that way. God did not design me that way. I'm just not. I could be angry at that time. And yeah, I had some choice words with my friends when it was all said and done. I was young. I just now started being exposed to a world where there wasn't all black people. So I didn't really know how to take it. I mean, I'm hanging out with the kids across the street. I worked in the mall when I was in Delaware, and across the street from the Dover Mall is a historical black college. Delaware State College is black. So I'm hanging out with them, and I'm telling them the experience. And of course, now you got people that's like, well, yeah, and that's the reason why we don't mingle with them. We don't do this, we don't do that. And even in those conversations, at the moment, I could be going along with them, but in my heart, in Shanya's heart, I was just like, I felt like if I only keep my mind open and only socialize with my people, I feel like I'm going to be missing out on something. That's how I felt. And when the people be looking at me when I say that, I'm like, because you don't know what that person behind another skin has to offer. I might be in a pool of 100 million black people, and they are smart and intelligent, and they've been here, and some of them are very worldly and diverse, but I might be missing out on something else with the Korean, with the Asian, with the Indian, with the Puerto Rican, whatever. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's how I look at the world. That's how I look at other people. And just be and I have and it's a weird thing because I feel like sometimes I literally have to defend myself sometimes with people of my own race and explain to them like and I'm like, why am I having to explain myself? I shouldn't have to explain myself to anybody on my views. I don't know why that episode right now, Divorce Court, where that lady was just trying to explain to her husband like she wasn't denying the fact that she was half black, but what she was trying to say is there's more to it than just the race. It can be because of where you grew up, who you grew up with. All of that plays into it. Yeah. I just I will reiterate, like I feel like the most racist people are the people that keep it going. And again, I will say, by no means am I naive, and no means am I saying that racism don't exist. By no means am I saying that there is injustice in certain situations. We just saw that a couple of years ago, with a man dying, However, I have to remember that there are incidents, there could be isolated incidents. There are corrupted laws within our own Constitution. I cannot accept the fact that I'm sorry, I can't accept the fact that I am only supposed to just trust my own race. I am only supposed to relate to my own race. I can't. And that's never going to be me. I am proud to be black. 365, like I said. I wouldn't want to be anything else because this is my skin. This is the skin I was born in. And I am willing to take the hardships along with the good times. That's just the way it is. But I do believe that sometimes you make things, you can kind of make your own world, it's what you make of it. I know it exists, and I know there are people that look at me and they can't stand me because of the skin color I'm in. And you know what? The thing is, at the end of the day, I always found a way to get around that. I always found a way, or else I wouldn't be this far. And like I said, I know some people say that I kind of play it down. I water it down to appeal to, another race or whatever. But I'm not being fake. I'm who I am. I'm who I am. And I just happen to like, I'm a black woman who happens to like, all kinds of music, different kinds of shows. Different kinds of people, different kinds of foods. And I always will. And I'm glad again that my dad he never planted that seed in my head. Thank you. But it is what it is. So I hope that just me telling y'all some of my experiences, it may not have done anything for you. It might just be like, oh, Shine's just telling us what's on her mind or whatever, but Again, it's a topic. I don't get into these kind of topics, but it struck a chord with me. And I just remember what my dad says. And I'm going to say it to you. Just like my dad told me at the age of 17, Shine, the world is not black. And I'll tell all of you, the world is not white. The world is not black. The world is not Asian. You know, the world is just, it's just diverse. And yes, there are some uglies in it. There are some ugly truths behind different races, different religions, and different creeds, and different sexualities, or whatever. But it really is what you make it. Yep. It is what you make it. And even when you do see things that are real, there is a real racist situation. It's a real bigot situation. You have got, I mean, basically my dad also instilled in me the common sense that I need to get around or go through those situations and still come out on the other side. Never having lost like understanding to my identity. That's why I said, yeah, I know I'm black. 365, baby. Ain't nothing changed. I can turn it on and off. If people were talking about some, are you from the hood? Yeah, I can talk like that. And I also can talk like I have some sense. Yeah. And I was about to wrap this up, but then I started thinking about something else when it came to, you know, the stereotypes. And this really is going to be my last point, because that other thing with stereotypes or whatever, when people, you know, I had that video a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about getting dressed, you know, and how I feel. One of the things that I've never been able to relate to, and I will not, and I'm sorry if anybody comes for me, I'm prepared. But I will not sit here and allow someone to say that a certain way of dressing, you know, that me as a black person should dress a certain way. I should wear my hair a certain way. I should talk a certain way. No, I'm not down with wearing a bonnet on my head and, you know, pajama pants in Walmart. I am not down with, you know, like the whole entire thing where it's okay, you know, to portray myself like as if I don't know how to carry myself out in public or something like that. Yeah, some people may stereotype, you know, black women like that, but hey, don't do that to me. And for my own race, don't try to call me out and say, well, you getting all dressed up just to go to Walmart, whatever, you know, you trying to please them or impress them. It's not about impressing anybody. It is about having some pride in my own self. So don't put me in that same category neither. As, well, you know, you trying to be bougie. You know, this is how we get down. No, ma'am, no, sir. I do not get down like that. That has nothing to do with me being black. That's the other thing. I don't like it. I don't tolerate it, and neither do my parents. They don't. But, okay, I think I'm really done. Yeah, I know I touched upon different things regarding race, but let me know what you think. The only thing I'm going to say, I normally won't say this in a video because, you know, I feel like I don't have to, but sometimes I have to say it. Please be respectful. You know, of course, I welcome all opinions because that's what makes us, you know, but there are ways that you can express your opinion with being respectful and tactful. Yeah. So, yeah. I hope the next time that I'm talking to y'all, it'll probably be something lighter. But until next time, yeah, that's it. I'll talk to you guys later. Give this video a thumbs up. Like it, but don't like it if you don't like it. All right. Bye-bye.